Welcome to the next podcast of Millinery.Info. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie. It's so wonderful to welcome you to this episode of Millinery.Info. In this series, we welcome leading milliners from across the globe into our ears in studio. Today, I have the honour of welcoming Giulia Mio to the podcast. Giulia shares about her path from being a costumer in Italy to finding her place in British millinery in Leicester. Thank you so much to our wonderful Patreon podcast sponsors for their support of this series. Jennifer Hertz Millinery, the Millinery Retreat School of Millinery, Hatblocks Australia, Hat Academy, Hatters Millinery Supplies, Judith M. Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lego, Lifted Millinery, Louise McDonald Milliner, Millinery Australia, The Hat Magazine, Barcelona Hat Days, and Hat Talk. You can check out a link to each of these businesses either in the podcast app or over across on the Millinery.Info website, where you'll also find some photos from Giulia that go along with this episode. If you've been enjoying this series, I'd like you to take a moment to head over to our Patreon page. There's 2 tiers that you can sign up to show your support, and it helps us continue to bring you these episodes monthly. Thank you so much, Giulia, for joining me on this episode of Millinery.Info. It's so wonderful to have you as part of the series.
Oh, thank you for calling me in. So fun.
Could you take us back? How did millinery come into your life?
It come by accident, as most things happen. I actually studied set and costume design in Italy. So I didn't come from any fashion background whatsoever. I studied Academy of Fine Arts in Venice and in Milan, and I was making costumes, reconstructions, dyeing, embroidering, the whole shenanigans. And during the second year of my master in Milan, we were asked to make costumes and accessories for an opera, the Turco in Italia. And our teachers were like basically enslaving us and saying, make the stuff because then we can actually go on tour. Okay, let's do it. And one of my teachers, the one who actually was covering the part of accessories and designing the props, she just said, oh, I know a little bit of hat making. Does anybody want to try to make some turbans and some hats? Why not?
Sure.
And somehow, I can't explain it in another way, it came out of my hands. It just happened. And she spotted it. She spotted, oh, you have a knack for it. You've done it before. Absolutely no. It was really instinctive. Just wrapping the fabrics, creating the block with a background for the fitting of the turban. Then kind of another girl made little tiny kind of sort of mini top hats. And I was looking at them, I was like, I think they're perfect, but there's something in the way they sit on the head that feels a little bit off. And we just adjusted a little bit to make it more comfortable for the wearer, which was, of course, a super opera singer, prima donna person that if she wasn't perfectly fitted, she would be screaming at us. Um, so that was my first to kind of dig into this. And
Yes.
my teachers kind of sort of like kept asking me, I think you have a knack for it. I think you should really look into this. Because at the time, we're talking about almost 15 years ago now.
Yeah.
There were not many milliners in Italy doing millinery. It's been picking up ever since, but it was not something that people were looking into very much. The old guard was still, kicking and doing all the work. So the younger generation was not really interested in that. And yeah, and she basically sort of kept supporting me in this. And she said, I think you should really look into it more. And she put me in contact with a lady in Switzerland that was a friend of hers. That said you could probably do some weeks in her with her. And at the time, my partner was living in Zurich, so I thought, perfect. I stay in Zurich with my partner, and then I travel to this tiny little atelier in Winterthur. Luckily, I remember a little bit of German I studied at school, so I could communicate with customers as well. Also, Swiss German is very different from German German, so never mind. But I could work it out basically.
Yes.
And so yeah, and that's how it started. I literally fell in love with it. Even this lady, Mirta, was really impressed, and she's like, I think you naturally hold things in the right way. You see things in a certain way that kind of makes it sculptural, but you're not afraid of basically trying things, which is something that I always knew it was one of my things. So let's do what it goes. And then I did. I just moved on with that.
Incredible. What type of hats were you making with Myrta?
With Mirta, we were making very simple hats, like stuff. She actually had a commission the first time I went there. She was finishing the hats for a ballet in Milan because she used to live in Milan, making hats there, and then she moved back to her hometown in Switzerland. So she still had the connections with Brancato Costumi, which is the atelier I started working with after I finished graduation. So I done 3 years as a theatrical milliner in Milan, making hats for big shows, and I was like dying in there. Trust me, it was amazing. But the amount of hours we were working, paid like less than a cleaner, is insane. But
Gosh.
that's how you start. And then we were making very like nice in Switzerland, they're very practical. So they would like felt hats, cloches. But at the same time, on the side, after we closed in the shop, we were making these kind of, I think it must have been a Romeo and Juliet ballet or something. So there were a
Oh,
few historically-ish hats to be made for the cast. Because I think she was doing the numbers, like the corpo ballet, not the main characters. So I did some bits in that.
how long were you with her for?
I've been with Mirta the first round 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and we did the shop plus the Romeo and Juliet. And then I think I've done 2 months after that, after I finished my graduation. Again, working in the shop, getting a little bit how to know how to run a shop as well, which I never had a shop, but it was fun to try. And we were making more commercial hats. But she taught me how to stitch on the sewing machine the straw braid without having the fancy one, just the normal one, because she didn't have the antique ones. She had the normal sewing machine. So we made a couple of hats or straw straight hats, but with the normal sewing machine, which I still can do, not beautifully, but I still can do. And then after those 2 months, I started working in Milan for Brancato, this atelier I was telling you about. That my first job was Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, the musical. I almost died, but it was fun. It was really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. But it was intense. As a kind of baptism of fire, it was really intense. But it was fun. After that, I think I did a couple of ballets. Then there was another musical. And I think there was another opera, but I can't remember exactly because it was all blurring into kind of long hours and life in life. So
You were in-house at the theatre?
we did a little bit of both. So Brancato in Italy we don't have many in-house workroom. It's mostly ateliers and workroom outside and supply the theaters. So there were three main atelier in Milan because of course we have La Scala and all that big theater around. Brancato, at the time, La Signora was still alive. Yes, Eufemia Brancato, the founder, she was still alive and she was 90 something at the time, and she still kicked in and
Wow.
in the workroom, going around checking things, correcting people with pattern cutting and stuff like that. She was, wow, a force of
An
nature. A little bit
icon.
mean, but a cool one, a cool mean, you know what I mean? Um, and I think she passed away a few years later, but she was really like super strong, super. She created the atelier in the 50s by herself. She used to dress Carla Fracci, all the Maria Callas. She used to do all those ladies from the atelier.
It's
And she
awesome.
founded it on her own and very tough, tough lady. And it was an honor to work with her, meet her. And she gave me quite a few tips when I was making my first crazy hat. So like, that is not gonna look good, girl. It's not gonna stay up. Oh, you make yeah, yeah. Even if you're not, she was not a milliner. She was an amazing tailor and seamstress, but she could see straight away that something was off.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that was yeah, Eufemia Brancato definitely a force to be reckoned with. I'm pretty sure
Amazing.
wherever she is right now, heaven, hell, whatever, she is definitely kicking butts. Absolutely. Absolutely. Putting
Awesome.
everybody in line. Absolutely.
Has the atelier stayed open? Like, is it still
Yes.
running?
Yeah, I think it's still running. I think it's still in the family. It's a family-run business. I think for a certain time they must have closed for a little bit because I think the head retired. So one of the sons, which were the grandsons of Signora Brancato, I think took over. But I lost touch with a lot of the people that were there at the time because I haven't been in Milan in more than 10 years. Oh, I know. Bad,
We're going to
bad.
get to
I
that.
should be going back.
But yes, no.
Oh
What
my
happened
God.
next? So, how you've ended up? Hold on, I don't want to skip ahead. What happened next?
Yeah, no, no. I happened next. So while I was living in Milan and working in theater, I realized I didn't want to work for theater. Make sense?
Yes.
Not because I didn't like it, but I realized that my brain goes into fine details, couture, little tiny particular things. And when you are working in theater, you don't have the time to make everything perfect. You have just to think practical, visual, strong, sturdy. And well, if you're working for a course for the movies, I was just strictly stage, theater, opera, stage, stepped on it, twirling on. It's not something that I enjoyed making them, but also repetition was a little bit an issue for me. I didn't like to make the same piece over and over again. I got very good at it, very efficient, but not enjoyed it. So at the same time, I was creating my own brand with a friend of mine, and we did dip our toes into more Milan Fashion Week, couture thingies. But it wasn't really, again, very predictable. I didn't
Yeah.
like the fact that Italians at the time, either you were outrageous with your hats, or has to be super space for well-made, a little bit different hats. It cannot be just super crazy or nothing. But at the time, it wasn't really the thing. So when my partner got offered a position in Oxford, we decided to move to the UK. And that was back in 2013, ladies and gents.
Wow.
It's been a while.
And you've
Yeah.
been there ever since?
So
Oxford, you're in Leicester now.
yeah, I haven't never
Yes.
came back. I'm in Leicester now, so we did 3 years, almost 3 years in Oxford. And then at the time I was working in a shop, but also still try to build up my skills as milliner because I did have some training, of course, but I was never formally trained by a milliner for more than, again, 2 weeks, 2 months. So I never had the opportunity to be an intern with anybody. And I would have loved to, but being in Oxford and not having the means to travel to London or be in London cut me out so many opportunities. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to be clever with my money, which was, of course, very little, and I'm going to cherry pick tutors that I really want to learn from. So whenever there was a London Hat Week or some kind of courses that were popping up, I was just like signing up for those, and getting my hands into the technique that I could have probably worked out myself because I don't know how if it's the same here, but in Italy, when you're trained in costume and theatre, you're mostly trained to solve problems. Like you have to create this 18th century costume with paper. Just do it. Okay, you have to really be inventive. And so a lot of the problem solving of millinery is what makes me tickle. Well, like, yeah, I want to do this. But of course, having somebody to teach you the basics, proper basics, not making them up as I used to do, helps. Hence me going up and down to London, do some courses. Um, I also did one with Jane Frey that with the fashion leather at one craft week. Not craft London Hat Week at some point. And I was listening to the podcast. Oh yeah, I know. I've done that course. It was fun. Um, and then basically when we moved to Leicester is because my partner got a position at Leicester University as a lecturer. So we moved here and I got access to this incredible studio where I am now, still.
Amazing.
Um, yeah, it's just one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I know Leicester is not glamorous and it's not fancy and all that nonsense, but it's lovely and it's perfect for me. So, shush, I like it.
It is a hub of textiles, though, in the UK.
Yes, yes, it is. It is.
It's
Really,
amazing.
really cool. And there's still a lot of little hidden gems. There are still some manufacturers here. They do knitwear, quite a lot of knitwear. They do very good jersey. So if you're on a hunt for good jersey, there is actually a factory here that makes very good jersey. Um, they still do have some kind of fast fashionies kind of bits. During the pandemic was a little bit of a scandal, like, yeah, duh, welcome. You think it's happening only here, really? It was just the one that I find out, basically. But I think Leicester has a soul for creativity and crafts. It's just been hidden under this pile of a little bit of racism, a little bit, they're not white. Well, what does it matter? Where do you think a golden embroidery comes from?
Yeah.
You know,
A lot of
where
very
do
skilled
you think that
makers.
comes from? Sometimes it's really funny when I'm really into history and kind of history podcast, by the way. And there was one I was listening to about where all the couture techniques we celebrate so much now, like gold work and all this kind of fancy embroidery and all that, where they were originated. They originated in India, love. They all came from there because they were the first hands, and they were draping, creating all these beautiful things. And when we decided to colonize the other half side of the world, we go, oh, there is gold here, there is silk here, this is fancy, I'm gonna use it. Um, so it's not that it didn't exist here before, but the higher skilled people were actually there. So why do we look down at them like they're nothing? They just actually the one who taught us how to do it
Yeah.
in the
You've
first
got so
place. So
learnt so much from their skills.
exactly.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Oh,
sorry.
your
Little
skills.
rant. It's
No, good
okay.
sidebar. You mentioned about you had a real target for who you wanted to learn from. And
Yes.
I guess adding to your toolkit because that problem solving mentality,
Mm,
you have to have some options in your toolkit to be able to draw on them to be able to
yeah.
solve the problem.
Yeah.
What were those things you were looking to learn? What did you target?
So I targeted mostly techniques. For example, I did know how to work with feathers, but I wasn't sure how to dye them properly without burning them. Things like this. So I did a course at the time was still considered Chelsea College. Now it's Morley College, but I did a course there, just doing like feather work. And I think it was Harvey Santos at the time he was teaching. Then I've done false shape with Carol Maher because I thought this is something fun. I never done this before. And I've done it. What else did I do? I did some crinoline work with another milliner from Australia, I think, but I can't remember her name now. Oh, sorry, I do apologize for everybody. I don't remember names. I remember faces. I don't remember names. Of course, I picked Dylan Woolwork for like couture techniques, spartery. I done some spartery and some finishing with him. And I want desperately to go back. He's just such a sweetheart. He's amazing. What else have I done? I've done Bridget Bailey with Cinema because I really wanted to get my hands, and that's I think her course. I don't know if she still teaches. I'm pretty sure she does. But at the time, I think I was having some issues with colors. So I like painting. I always like painting and dyeing, but I wasn't sure how to approach painting and shading and coloring into millinery in an elegant way. And of course, I knew how to dye straw, how to dye cinema, but it just felt really dull, very like monochromatic and boring. So when she said, "Oh, you can paint the cinema with a brush," I was like, "Oh yeah, that is true."
Skill unlocked.
Um, so it was like, yeah, you can just imagine it's a canva instead of being like so just use the brush and use the dye very concentrated and hello.
Oh,
So and that really unlocked the idea of course, raw cinema is amazing, but it's really hard on your hands. So not everybody likes it. I do love it, but it's not something that people, really dive into because after a while your hands are really sore. But just the idea of combining colors like a painter, like a watercolor, more than just thinking, oh, it has to be matchy or the same shade or whatever. And that's why I got into ombre dye again. I used to do ombre dye for fabric when I was in university.
yes.
And but actually I can ombre dye in three tones like I used to because now I felt I could try and I knew it was not going to damage the material. Um, so yeah, I can ombre dye up to three, no more than otherwise it looks terrible. But up to three colors is still doable.
That's cool.
Tough, but doable.
Yeah. And when you were, so you had your business, you'd started with your friend in Milan. When did you go
hmm
out into your own label and brand and put some of your hats out into the world?
So I basically, as soon as I moved to the UK, I did try to keep working with my friend in Italy, but it was not just practical. And so we folded a business then, and I basically left it all to her. And I started by my own here, and that's why I started picking the tutors and, tried really to get my head around things because at the time I was still torn between being a costume designer and maker, which I was trained for, and a milliner. But I soon realized that not having been trained in the UK, not having the connections and the background here, even if my degree, of course, is valid in the UK, didn't make my life any easier. It was just really hard to just get into an interview or to be even considered for a job. So it didn't really put me off, but I also thought you can't be both. It's too hard. You're gonna stretch yourself too thin if you're trying to be a costume designer and costume maker and a milliner. You need to focus on one of the two, at least at the very beginning, and pick your battles basically, girl. Pick your battles, start focus on one goal, and that's what I did. So I thought I'm gonna stick to millinery. I feel like this is my way through a lot of things. And while I was working in this little lovely shop that unfortunately is closed now, but in Oxford it was this little lovely shop. I was a sales assistant and assistant manager at some point. It was really lovely because I got the first of all improved my English massively because I was forced to talk to people. I was coming with a good English already, but being around people trying to sell and explaining things and finding right words to say things um, was really helpful to improve the lingo.
Yes.
And it also taught me how to read people a little bit more. Of course, being from a different country, every country has their own way of doing things, like unwritten rules, behavioral things that we don't even know we do until you move somewhere else and they don't laugh at your jokes. Why don't you laugh at my jokes? That's funny in Italy. Why is not laughing here? Or they crack a joke at me like it was supposed to be funny.
Oh,
Situations like
yes.
that. It sounds really silly. I know we're not talking about hats,
No.
but it's about being different in a country where you look so similar.
And
Because
a
of course I
customer
have an
service thing
accent.
too, because you're eventually wanting to sell product to someone. So you need to
Exactly.
understand the market that you're in.
Exactly. So it was a lot of learning in there. And I'm always grateful for it because it's a great experience to understand more the British culture and how they like to be not say served, but they like to be approached. And they'll also find my way of doing it, adapting to what is a little bit expected of me, or I don't know, just be myself, but with a veneer of politeness or whatever, whatever you want to call it.
A little bit of an English lens.
I am polite. Yeah, just a little bit sparkle of Britishness, a little bit of sprinkle of it.
It's very cool. And moving to Leicester, that was I guess, a big change from being in Oxford. It's just a different city.
Yeah,
How did you find your studio space?
absolutely. It was again by accident. I was just Googling it, good old Saint Google, and there was this availability at the Maker's Yard, which is this lovely heritage building. It's been renovated. They used to make socks and stuff, like knitted stuff, here. And then it closed down and it was derelict and but it's such a great building. So it was renovated completely and transformed into studio for artists and makers. And it was this large room, Studio 6, where you have basically single bays, open space within one partitions. But you have your own bay allocated and you distribute the space the way you like it. So there was an availability there. I was like, oh, that sounds fun. So the lady, Sue, who was still managing the place at the main office, took me here one morning when we were still looking for flats. And I was like, oh, we never had a milliner here before. You would be a great addition for the place. I hope so. And she is one of the best person I've ever met here. She's so knowledgeable of the city and so sweet. And yeah, she showed me the place. I was like, I like it. It's wood floor, brick walls, the old Victorian vibe, but we have functioning toilets, we have a lift, we have cleaners, 21st century kind of
Luxury.
comfort in this lovely, cozy building. And yeah, well, yeah, definitely luxury, I would say. We have heating, that kind of stuff. Shocking. So yeah, I really love it, and I've been here ever since. And the people in the studio changed over the years. Not all of them, few stayed, but now it's one of the places I feel well the most happy. It's all female, not because we wanted, we are welcoming everybody, but we happen to be all female businesses. And again, Sarah, I'd mentioned the lady who's currently lending me her desk is a beautiful, fantastic woman who does fitting and pattern cutting and pattern drafting for clothing. Then we have people like Claire, who is a vintage trader and she sells vintage clothing. She repairs them, fixes them up, and she has her own like a repro brand. We have like laser cutting, we have a knitter designer, we have a costume maker. So it's very interesting and vibrant. And we have our little kitchenette with a microwave and everything. We sit down and we do like Italian lunch, which means we have 45 minutes minimum break. That is mandatory.
Love that. Love
Yeah,
that.
please, please sit down, eat, have a coffee, have a conversation with a human being, and then you can go back to work. Do not eat your bloody sandwich at the desk. It's sad. It's sad.
It's also a great way to connect with other small businesses. And even if you're not directly collaborating, but chatting through, I don't know, a challenge that might be happening or coordinating with a client or if something hasn't quite gone right, it's support for each other as well.
It's amazing the amount of time we influence each other. We ask opinions. When you have, even when you have a bad day, you come in fuming because something is happening. You vent like crazy, swear like a trooper, and then 10 minutes later, everything is fine because somebody's bringing you a cup of tea with a biscuit. It says, "Are you feeling better now?" Yes, thank you. And you move on because sometimes you just need a ginormous rant, and somebody will listen to you without telling you what to do because that's sometimes, yeah, I know it sometimes comes from a good place, but nobody's in your head. And it's very hard to have people telling you that's the best thing you can do. Sometimes unsolicited advices are really annoying. But here I'm lucky that my girls are, I call them my girls, and we are each other girls, are all very supportive and lovely and understanding and not very different as well. So I think not being all the same, not just as business, but as personality helps massively. Confronting each other in different opinions and different places of life, it's just fundamental. And
Very cool.
diversity is the key for everything. Not being always the same, repeating, repeating, repeating. No good. We need to be diverse, different. So
So
yeah,
fantastic.
that's the Studio 6 for you, Maker's Yard, the best place on earth.
Sounds pretty amazing.
It is amazing. It is amazing.
Do you have customers come visit you there? How do you interact with your customers?
Oh, that is the fun part. I have a client after I'm talking to you, by the way, so it's gonna be fun. They basically get adopted by the studio. They walk in and they get straight away unsolicited opinions about everything, but in the nicest way possible. We always get like we have because we have our little kitchenette with the sofas and everything. We sit down, we chat, we see the dress, the outfit, and all of that. Um, but it is so I don't know how to explain it. I think some people feel a little bit baffled at the beginning because they see this incredibly cozy, comforting environment. They're not used to this. Especially, women, they tend to be quite protective of each other, roles and spaces, especially if they're in a competitive environment. And of course, most of the clients I have coming from a fairly high-end jobs, so they are used to this kind of very competitive, hardcore jobs, which of course earn them a lot of money, but it makes them also very conscious about their persona and the role they have to play. And then they enter here and they say, "Lady, hi, good morning, how you doing? Oh, that dress looks lovely on you. That color. Let me see this. Oh my God, that's great. Why have you thought about it?" And you start having this entire not always because it depends on the studio, but if you are all in, they try to be quiet, but they can't help themselves. They literally jump in. So you get a full consultation,
The
360
whole
from
team.
hair to makeup to and it's like, okay, guys, I need to make the hat for the lady. Oh yeah, I'm sure you're gonna make something great. So let me see this. It's like, no.
Focus on the hat team.
Um,
Hat, hat, hat.
and then they're very I'm very gentle with people. I don't like being too I understand that my personality is quite bubbly and not everybody is comfortable with somebody who is I mean, here we're chitty chatting like crazy, but I understand that everybody has their own right to their own space and their own peace. And if the girls are the same, so I'm not assuming that you come in and you'll get basically aggressively tackled, but you know what I mean? Like it's they leave you be. They can read the room very quickly. That's what I'm saying. You're not
Yeah,
always like this. But as soon as they see an opening, they take it.
that's very fun.
So for me, it's always great because you have people coming through the door, not sure what's gonna happen to them unless they're returning customers. They get
Yes.
this very welcoming, environment. You get a cup of tea, you get a biscuit. We try hats, we try shapes. I have basically some nude shapes, just the shape, the basic shape without any decoration, so I can just see if this works in size and proportion. I have some flowers, so I can play with materials and feathers, so I can literally build up the hat while they're watching. I have a lot of imagination and I can imagine in my head the entire thing finished, but not everybody's like me, so that's why. And then you can see from the side somebody looking and lurking, like, "Oh, that's a nice dress. Oh, that's a nice pair of shoes." And again, and they sneak in, and it becomes a collective sort of consultation. But if they see the customer a little bit uncomfortable, or maybe they want to be quiet, they just stay back. They just say nothing, and they just smile and they let you be. So that's the beauty of the delicacy of women around women. So yeah,
Totally.
that's what I like about having customers here. Actually, I know a lot of people don't. Unfortunately, there's this kind of silly bad reputation about Leicester that is completely, absolutely ridiculously not deserved. But they don't come to Leicester City because they don't feel
See.
it's fancy enough or posh enough. And then they come here and they're like, oh, actually, this is really lovely. I told you
Sure.
so. I told you so. Just because it's not like fancy, sparkly London, it doesn't mean it's less worth your time. And if you're willing to spend
Absolutely.
an hour and a half on the tube or sitting in the traffic to go from A to B in London, why are you not willing to do the same to come to Leicester and actually have a great experience?
So
It's just
true.
because the name doesn't sound, doesn't resonate with you as much. I have a shop in Notting Hill. No, I don't. I have a studio atelier in Leicester. What does it matter?
It's a pretty cool space.
It's a very cool space. It's very cool indeed.
So interesting to hear about that concept of the naked hat and helping people visualize that because, as you said, not everyone can see that, and being able to
Absolutely.
give them an experience of also stepping through that process. And that's the advantage of coming in to see you. It sounds like that you can get that experience, and then it's truly just theirs, and
Yeah.
it's
I make
developed
only
before
one of
their
a kind.
eyes.
Yeah. I don't like repeating hats at all. So I try, and especially when I have a client who doesn't matter the budget, by the way. You can have 300 or 3,000, you get the same service. Of course, different hats, but different
Yes.
same service. Um, it's more making something for them. So if they come in and there's something already made that works absolutely wonderfully for what they have, fabulous, it's yours. It's still one of a kind because I'm not going to repeat that hat exactly the same. But if it's not, and there is a design you want, but we're not sure about the proportion, I found it easy to have these kind of molds already made in plain cinema, like ivory cinema. So you can just see the shape, how it fits on your head, the size, the proportion, the balance. Do you like it? Don't you like it? How you feel about it? And then from there, I build up literally the hat with them. And of course, using the sketches helps as an extra help. But I feel like they don't understand that it could be possible. They are
Yes.
really shocked by the idea that you're actually making it for me. Yes, and nobody else will have this hat. Not the
Ever.
same, ever, ever. Even if
It's
just
pretty
because you
cool.
pick your favorite flower and then I'll make your favorite flower instead of having everybody's rose. Oh, I have this specific flower in my garden. It happened to me a few years ago. I have a lovely lady who her son was getting married in the garden and she was a very keen gardener, so she had these beautiful blooms all around. And she was like, "Oh, I really would like some flowers on my head." I said, "What's your favorite flower then?" "Oh, it had a specific, I have a very specific peony." Like, show me a photo. So basically, I made the peony in silk for her hat.
Oh, wow.
And you're like, "Oh my
Beautiful.
God, peonies are very complicated flowers to make. So they look easy, but if you want to make them really, not necessarily realistic, but the vibe of the flower is not always easy to capture.
Yes.
I don't necessarily want to replicate botanically accurate flowers. I want to replicate the feeling of the flower, what makes me feel that flower, what's the vibe, the feeling, the sensations I have when I see that flower. So it could be choosing the right fabric, it could be choosing the right way of dyeing it, it could be the way I curl it, maybe overlapping flowers, overlapping, sorry, fabrics instead of using one plain fabric. Anything could work. You have just to try it. And yeah, she was really like, I don't know, you just figured out how to make this peony for me. Yes. And
Yep.
that was her hat. A very simple, plain hat, but with this beautiful bloom on it. And she was like, it didn't look real per se, because that was not the point, but it
Yes.
looked the peony for my garden. Make
That's
sense?
amazing. Yes, absolutely. The essence of it was there. Oh, how special. Do you build a collection each year? How do you go about having those stock pieces?
So I used to make two collections a year, a winter one and a summer one. Then I realized I don't want to make the winter one because it's boring. So I make just
Fair.
the summer collection every year, and it's becoming smaller and smaller by every year because I don't see the point of making 20 one of a kind hats. It's not really possible. So I tend to make up to 12 hats in a collection, which is fairly small, but it's always inspired by a theme. So I'm a storyteller. Probably you can tell how the amount of talking I can do. And I think my background in costume still gives me this desire to communicate something. So I tell you a story through my collection. It could be something like my favorite flower. It could be something through the colors that I feel drawn to. It could be an inspiration from a movie I've seen. It doesn't necessarily mean something important to everybody or to me. It could be just something, a fil rouge that I use to create the collection. And for example, this year I decided to go a little bit cuckoo banana and go for macro, which means going like literally into the flowers, like when you have the macro on your camera,
Yes.
and either going into really details with the flowers or make them very big.
Very cool.
Um, but that required me figuring out how to make them that big, or how to figure out how to make the center in a certain way that looked kind of interesting. Of course, that's why I made only 7 hats this year, because by the time I figured out how to bloody make them,
It was
I'm
time to take
running out of
photos.
time. I'm running out of time. So that's why it's experimenting, the never-ending possibility of flower making, about millinery in general, that drives me. And that collection is not gonna change. It's just doesn't matter if I made it 5 years ago or this year. It's just unique. So if I don't sell it this year, that hat it will eventually sell because it's well made. It's a beautiful hat, beautifully finished, and doesn't follow trends. So if, for example, a few years ago there was magenta was the color of the year, and I actually did love that color. For once, I really loved the color. So I made one hat that was magenta, but that was it. So it doesn't really. I can't remember what was a couple of years ago. It was like a very sad white or a gray or something. Not a chance I'll use that color in my palette. That's so depressing. Um, so no, that didn't end up there. It's fine. So yeah, that's what I do for a living, making
Very
crazy hats.
cool. And how do
It's
you go
fun.
about? Do people contact you online? How do you go in the remote consultation? How do you
Oh
manage
yeah.
someone in a distance?
So the remote consultation is hard. It's hard. I am a very personal kind of thing. I like talking to people directly. Um, so I use a lot of social media, and I am not fond of social media. It might look like I'm very fond of it because I'm always there, but actually I rather close all my accounts and do word of mouth if I could. But in the reality is I can't. So I've learned how to live with it, balance as much as I can my desire for privacy to my need to be seen and to be heard in order to promote myself and my designs. So I get a lot of messages from Instagram, and what I normally do is say, you know what, cut to the chase, give me your phone number, we WhatsApp each other, we do a video call. Because
Much
sometimes
easier.
it's just important to see the person, to see the whole package. And I use Zoom as well, but sometimes on WhatsApp it feels less formal, it feels less, and it's secured because it's encrypted. So, I'm gonna keep your phone number safe. It's not gonna go anywhere. I'm not gonna share it to anybody. The photos of you wearing your PJ and no makeup, just social media hair color, nobody's gonna see that. No, it's just a private conversation as you were in the studio with me. Even
Yes.
if you can come to the studio, fantastic. Of course, I'll be delighted. But if they can't, WhatsApp video call makes it fun. I can send you photos of the making of. I can keep you updated, but it's not imposing. You can read the message whenever you want. It's not like you don't have to book yourself for it, like a
Yes.
Zoom call or whatever. You just read it when you can, and then you message me when you can, and then we can arrange a meeting, which is a fancy way to say video call, and you're
Yes.
done. Not being in London has created issues for my business, of course, because
Yes.
everything is London centric in the UK.
Yes.
Um, but at the same time, it gave me a lot of freedom because I can afford to spend more time in experimenting because my rent is way cheaper compared to London.
Yes.
Practical things like this. It's just the reality of things, and I don't think people should be shy of saying that. If you're in London, you have more chances, but also you're struggling to pay rent because it's ridiculous. So here I can still make beautiful couture hats.
And how do you find the aesthetic you mentioned about how Italy had a really extreme, like very over the top or fancy style or absolutely nothing? How have you found, I guess, a middle, is the UK style being a middle ground for you and finding your aesthetic? How do you find that?
I found that here in the UK, you are allowed to experiment. You are allowed to try different things. They might not sell, they might not be highlighted, and it might take you a while to be seen and known. We are basically the fashion police. So If you are just the wrong shade of black, because again, remember there are shades of black in Italy, then you are out. And I find it here you can literally be yourself in without many restrictions. And when I start making my hats, I thought, oh, maybe I should be more commercial, maybe I should be more sellable. I did have my times when I tried to be more commercial, but commercially appealing. Let's put it that way. I mean, I can, and I did. And if somebody comes around and say, I really would like you to design a collection to go with my dresses, happy to do that. I'm not saying I can't, but especially when I started, I really needed that freedom in my brain to try. Now that I'm a little bit more, I've been running my business for 10 years now, which is not very long to be honest, but I still feel that I am more grounded, a little bit more like I know a little bit more what I am and who I am more than what. What? Definitely a crazy millionaire. Who? Not sure yet. But I feel that there are things in me that I want to express to a higher level and I really want to make artistic pieces. Every time somebody says, "Oh, there is this kind of gallery or this exhibition," yes, I'm in. I'm coming. I'm doing it. Because it gives you the freedom to make something completely unrelated to your commercial side. I last year we did two exhibition. For one for Craft Week, that was Beyond the Brim, and one for Luton. And I made two ridiculous hats for one for each of them. The one for London Craft Week, it took me about 14 days to make that hat, and
Wow.
full 14 days, which I haven't made anything else. And I knew it was taken away from my business because, of course, those are not paid days anywhere, but I didn't care. I just needed that moment of complete freedom to express myself and to investigate and explore all these flowers that I wanted to make and uh, try new things I've never done before. Gilding flowers. Have you ever gilded a flower before? I haven't.
No.
I've tried and it didn't work, so I did it in a different way. So I found this kind of paste that framers use to gild very quickly their frames to kind of repair bits, and it's more like a paste. So I thought I'd try that one instead of gilding. It works better. Great,
Amazing.
done. But you have to try. You have to see how it works. I really want to make more artistic pieces, I have to be honest. And I have designed three hats that if I ever have a little bit of time, I will sit down and let's say I have a very good year and I can sort of park it for a little bit. I'll sit down and I'll make them, and people will be like, "You are completely cuckoo banana." And I will say, "Yes, I am, but I am happy to be." So,
It brought me joy. And those exhibitions with the British Hat Guild, is that right?
yes, yes, it was. Yeah.
Yes.
It's it's such a weird experience being part of the British Hat Guild because we are a community of very solitary creatures. And that sounds like absolute nightmare, but it's not. So there are like I think about 70 something of us now, 75, I think,
Yes.
somewhere like that. So the number is growing, slow and steady. Um, Hatters, theatrical millionaires, movies, millionaires, historians. There's a little bit of everything in there, and it's brilliant because you can really kind of put an email out if you say I'm looking for something like this or can anybody direct me to this and eventually somebody will know oh I know somebody or so there is a community is an important thing I say.
What did you create for the Luton exhibition? What was that celebrating?
I've created a so the theme was about being sustainable so it was about sustainability so I've created a architectural headpiece inspired by Macintosh the Scottish artist is inspired by a piece of textile he designed, and I just created like a lot of wire work and this ginormous cabochon rose in the middle, collected over the years. And I wanted to show that you could create an absolute avant-garde, completely, unexpected piece using vintage materials, which people associate with old hats or vintage looking hats or reproduction. Um, so that was my goal. Change their perception of about vintage materials. And I think it worked really well because that is my studio here. People are like, how do you wear it? Okay, I'll show you. You have some weights on one side that looks like something that is not a weight. You have this big rose in the middle. Then you have these spikes going out that looks like lines. Then okay, you are mental. Yes, I am indeed. You discover it now.
She's made an art piece though, and it's beautiful.
Exactly.
So, with those two recent pieces, what have been some of your favorite pieces? Are there any that stand out in your mind that you've made so far? Any favorites?
Oh, I really don't have favorites, which is a sad thing to say from, it's like asking your mother to choose between her
I
children.
understand that it is a tough question.
I, it's like, I like flowers, as everybody knows, but people think I'm obsessed with them. No, I'm not. I like them because it gives me the challenge. But if you say, I hate flowers, I don't want anything to do with flowers, I'll make you a flowerless hat, I promise. I can do that. But for Ascot and those big events, I really don't have a favorite because everybody, whenever I make a hat, is for somebody specific. So unless somebody brought it from a pre-made, well, not pre-made, but like some of my collections and stuff. So I don't really, it doesn't belong to me anymore. At the moment I make it for somebody, yes, I physically make it, but the person who's gonna wear it is the true owner in the first place.
Yeah,
Um, I've made one of my favorite pieces that I made was for an exhibition a few years ago, the Aki headpiece, the one that now is with the Japanese leaves and all the spider lilies and stuff. That was one of my favorite pieces I've ever made. That is being sold to the museum in China,
amazing.
which was really, really cool to be honest. I'd be like, oh, okay, you really want my hat? Yes, thank you, take it.
Awesome.
Um, but I think Ascot and the Royal Ascot in general is one of those events where people should really appreciate millinery and hat making to the next level because not everybody can afford it, and I understand that. Remember, I'm practical, I do understand that. Uh, but the amount of work that every millionaire puts into that part of their lives, it's insane. So, in general, I'd say all hats are potentially good as long as the person who's made it with heart. And a lot of millionaires I know, I would say 99% of them, they're putting way more than their heart in it. They just love it too much. So I have no favorites because they all equally belong to
All
me.
special.
By me, sorry. It's just, yeah.
It's very cool. And when you make your collections capturing them, how do your photo, your images are always so beautiful? What goes into
Oh, thank you.
planning your photo shoots to capture that?
Oh God, I am blessed with a dream team, mostly created here in the studio, of course, because I have access to my friend Claire, who is the lady who trades in vintage, who happens also to be an amazing makeup artist and hair makeup artist.
Thank you, Claire.
So she's been doing me, and whenever I was starting my career, I was being the model. And so ever since she's been doing the hair and makeup for my model, who is a dear friend of mine called Becca, who happens to be a podcaster from BBC. And I just saw something in her. Would you, by any chance, be my model? Why not? We could give it a go. And since then, it happened. Um, then I have a very dear friend of Claire's who became a friend of mine, who is the film videographer, the filmmaker. And he is an incredible, he did actually shoots movie. So his job for 25 years is actually shooting movies. But he's a friend, so he comes and have a cup of tea and I pay him pizza and then he does my videos. Just for the photo shoot, by the way. All everything else I have to do myself. But that day he comes and he has a great time. Um, and the photographer is the same. Like it's a local girl that she is very talented. She works out with burlesque artists. So she knows how to capture human souls somehow. And I think that just happens. It's just something that we can make it work. And yeah, and again, I am blessed with a dream team, people that I trust, I've been working with so many years, and they understand me, they understand my ethos, my narrative, and they just make it happen like magic.
So fantastic. Working in your own business, do you have a particular structure to your week or does it depend what's on? Do you have a routine for how you work with clients or schedule them in?
I'm all over the place, like most creative, but I'm an organized chaos kind of person. So I try to be quite strict with myself. Some days I function better than others, so I have to take into account. If something comes up and I realize it's important, I reschedule things around it. Um, and again, because I can walk to the studio anytime, we have 24-hour access here. So I can, if I want to work over the weekend or overnight, I can. Um, I try really hard to keep my weekends for myself and my partner, but if I can't for any reason, I try really to not overwork myself because I've been there, I've done it before. Before pandemic, I was really silly with myself and my body, and I think pandemic didn't put this big pause on everybody in a form or shape. And I was getting a little bit mental because I wasn't doing anything and it was just like going to, I mean, crazy. But I think it made me realize how tired I was already. And being tired is normal, it's part of life. It's nothing to do with it, but nothing wrong with it, sorry. But being tired and stretched thin, overworked for no reason, it's silly.
It's
Plus,
not sustainable.
literally the only perks of being self-employed is that exactly, it's not sustainable. But the only perks, really, the only perks being self-employed is that you're your own boss. So if one day you wake up and you have a splitting migraine and you're tired and you haven't slept well, why you go to work? Because your boss tells you, but your boss is you. So tell the boss to shut up, make yourself a cup of tea, go back to bed.
I get
That's
that.
the really, only perks of being self-employed. Um, so I think that's what I've learned over the years to be a little bit more kind to myself. And I know I had to give up a lot of things. I used to do ballet and yoga. Now I have just to do ballet because I can't fit yoga anymore and I miss it. I really do miss my yoga, to be honest. Yeah, try to buy. I know it's not always possible. When the season peaks and you have really busy, there's nothing you can do. But when you're more on a average routine, balance your life better because you have one life. If you live it like horribly because you're obsessed with work and you have nothing else left, you know, what's that? I don't think it's a good life. And I'm a workaholic, by the way, so I am always at work. But I try to balance with other things.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of work, what is on your table next? What can we look forward to seeing?
I have two commissions, three commissions, I think. Okay, so I have two boaters. One is a secret project I can't talk about, but one is a client. Then I have a headband with flowers going to Northern Ireland, I think. Then I have a Marie Antoinette inspired hat because my client is obsessed with Marie Antoinette, so it's gonna be something fairly fancy. What else do I have? I have another hat for Ascot.
And is there a technique that you're burning to explore? What's next on your exploration list?
Oh, so I love embroidery. I always did. And I've done a short course with hand and lock with gold work, and I'm obsessed with it. So if I find the time and some funding, I want to explore more couture embroidery. Just actually for fun. I'm not planning to start making hats covered with gold work. Not a chance. Way too long, way too expensive. But just read the boundaries and the possibilities of it. But I did sign up for an actual gilding leather workshop. So here in
Ooh.
Leicester. So I'm gonna learn how to gild leather properly. Not like I used to do with a PVA glue, which is not the right way, by the way, it's not the right way. Um, and yeah, so always kind of something millinery, technically adjacent, close to it, but not necessarily millinery related because I like mixing techniques. I like to bring in something that doesn't technically belong to millinery into my basket of knowledge and see what I can do with it.
Beautiful. Well, that sounds so fun. We can't
Yeah.
wait to see this. Thank you so
Hmm.
much for sharing your millinery world with us. It's been so lovely to talk cats with you, Julia.
Oh, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Millinery Info. It was wonderful to hear about Giulia's story so far. Thank you to our wonderful Patreon podcast sponsors for their support. The Millinery Retreat School of Millinery, Hatlocks Australia, Jennifer Hertz Millinery, Hat Academy, Hatter's Millinery Supplies, Judith and Millinery Supply House, Hats by Lego, Lifted Millinery, Millinery Australia, The Hat Magazine, Louise McDowell Milliner, Hat Talk, and Barcelona Hat Days. A special thank you to Hat Talk and Hat Academy, who also share the podcast on their platforms. So, wherever you're listening from today, thank you so much for joining me. I'm your host, Lauren Ritchie, and I look forward to talking hats with you again soon.